Pastor here, I want to welcome you to Crosspoint Church. We've been in a series called Multiply over the last 3 weeks. Today is the fourth and final week of it, and I have asked some financial experts to join me on the platform here. I do want to say one thing to you that you really need to hear. I want you to hear this. Sometime back, several months back, I told you, and I said, I'm going to say something about this once, and that's all. And I told you that we were $132,000 in the red. And we were not meeting our budget, and it was kind of scary. And you showed me the great power of influence I have, because shortly we were $152,000 in the red. So I did a great job that day. Anyway, but here's what I want to tell you. Over the past month, we have gone from being $152,000 in the red to being $17,000 in the red. That is a huge jump. Yeah. I appreciate your faithfulness. I appreciate your believing in this church and trusting God. And I think God's going to take care of us. So we want to do something a little different today. I've got some folks up here, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves to you. All right?
Thank you, Tom. Good morning. My name is Darren Womble, and I know quite a few of you, but I've been a member of the Crosspoint family since 2015 when we moved here. I've been in the financial industry for going on 20 years and own my own investment and financial planning firm. And I've also been an off and on coordinator for Financial Peace University for the last 13 years.
All right.
Hey, my name's Tyler Rohr. My wife Jody and I have been members of the Crosspoint family for about 17 years now. I don't have roles like these guys do, but have had the privilege of serving here as the financial director historically, which in turn I've led a lot of FBU classes and worked with a lot of families here at Crosspoint.
All right. Also known as T-Money, by the way.
Really, that's the only reason you asked me up here, right?
That's pretty much it.
My name's Andrew Thompson. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. Prior to that, I was in full-time ministry for 15 years, and my wife and I have been and my kids have been coming to Crosspoint since 2020.
You may have gotten an email from me this week, and you may have seen that the makeup of this panel was a little bit different. Marcus Parker was supposed to be on the panel. Marcus's mom passed away, and he has gone to Florida. I wish you'd remember he and Sarah and the Parker family in your prayers, but Tyler has graciously stepped in his stead, and we're not going to waste any more time because we want to get to the good stuff, good practical stuff. What is the number one problem you see people having in the area of their finances?
The biggest problem I see is a lack of contentment. We are not content to have everything that we need. We constantly want more, and we think we need more. So we all understand that needs are, food, shelter, clothing, transportation. But I think sometimes we think that those needs really are, restaurants and kitchen upgrades and a new pair of Jordans and, car payments, right? So we mistake our wants for needs, and we just need to reorient our new perspective sometimes. I think a great way to get a new perspective is to take a mission trip. I've been to Haiti a couple of times and watched some great folks there sweep their dirt floors in their shacks. And it reminds you of how much you have and that our houses are just filled with wants. And so if we can shift our perspective and become more content, I think we'll be happier. We all are familiar with Philippians 4:13. You might be. That's, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But a big part of that verse is the two verses prior to that, where the strength that we're talking about is all about the strength of contentment. Because Paul writes in Philippians 4, verse 11, he says, "Not that I ever was in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing and with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or with empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength.
That's good.
For me, I think it's lack of intentionality would be the biggest problem. One thing I like to think about is you can fail on accident, but rarely can you be successful on accident. And it's not just about money, right? It's about all aspects of our life, our health, our relationships, our marriage, our parenting. So for me, I think the biggest opportunity is do things on purpose, have a plan. If you're married, then that means doing it together.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that one of the things I've seen over the years that's really one of the biggest issues is a lack of allocating our resources and our money to the things that are most important to us. And I'll bring up the word budget. There tends to be a lack of a budget. A lot of people budget for their fixed expenses, their rent or mortgage, their car payments, their utilities, the things that they pay every month, but then they wind up surprised, oh, it's birthday time, it's Christmas time, or I wasn't expecting that, and it just wasn't planned for. So I would say that's one of the biggest issues that I've dealt with over the years. And one of the things that kind of goes along with Andrew is a scripture that I think about to this is, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Romans 12:2. And to me, that's really just telling us that in everything that we do in life, we need to really focus on what God wants us to do. And I really think that also includes our finances. And I think that it affects our decisions and choices and how we allocate our resources.
Yeah. Well, you just lost about 90% of the audience because you cursed and used the B word. Forgive me, budget, okay? I think budgets, when we hear that word budget, it sounds so negative and it sounds so constrictive and it sounds complicated to most people. And it's just something they don't want to do. Is there a way to see them as positive and simple?
Yeah, I mean, the reason they've become a curse word is because oftentimes budgets suck, right? And that's the truth of it. When in reality, a budget is a tool, and a tool is meant to, be used for your benefit. So instead of seeing a budget as being restrictive or being something that just tells you no, what we've learned in our family is it teaches us or helps us to plan to say no to the right things, right? Because there's, I can say something's a priority, like giving, like saving, but if I don't budget that or I don't spend that way, then it's really not a priority at the end of the day. A quick story, this is just kind of airing a little bit of our history, but when my wife and I were newlyweds and we started budgeting for the first time, we first went back about a month and tracked, hey, what did we actually spend our money on? And if you would have asked us, what our eating out budget was, I would have said it was like a couple $100s, and it ended up being like $1,200. And so I looked at Jody, I'm like, you've been going to Killen Steakhouse for lunch or what? Because I'm not eating $1,000 a month. And what we found is it was little things like Sonic and Chick-fil-A and, grabbing a snow cone, like all those little things for us added up. And what it gave us the ability to do is say, yeah, we love our Route 44, but, maybe let's trim back on this so that we can do things that are more important.
Good.
Yeah, people think that budgeting is about spending less money, and though that's not necessarily wrong, it's really about spending less money on the things you don't want to spend money on. And it's about spending more money on the things that you really believe are a priority. So really budgeting, it sounds like a bad word, but it's simply prioritizing your spending. It's making a list of the things that are most important for you and then spending your money on that and not the things that you don't really want to. And then I would also add that it's really crucial part of budgeting is tracking your spending as the month goes along, because that will help you actually stick to your priorities. If you don't track it throughout the month, you don't have a budget, you just have a wish. And so you've really got to track it. And there is an app for that. There's an app for everything, right? There's the Every Dollar Budget app, and that's a part of what we give away with Financial Peace University. So we can talk more about that another time.
And I'll add that prioritizing your budget, as Andrew and Tyler mentioned, is extremely important. And but I want to focus on the fun part of the budget. Is it doesn't have to be all the stuff that you don't want to spend money on, like bills. You can budget and create a budget for the fun things in life, whether it's your golf membership or the spa, doing your nails, whatever that is. If it's built into a budget that you both agree on, there's usually not any arguments at the end of the month, and that's your ability to say, hey, this is for this. And so it doesn't have to be a negative thing. You can build fun things into it.
Good. Well, I know that saving is important. You already mentioned that, but how much? How much should I save?
Everybody's situation is different. Everyone's a different walk of life. And I would say to those that are having trouble saving, you really want to try to at least get maybe a month's worth of expenses set aside so that when life happens, because it does, and for our family this past month or two, a lot of life has happened. And I would say once you get to that maybe month of savings set aside, really focus on getting any credit card debt paid off as quickly as possible. And for those that are more easily able to save, I think it's really important to save at least up to 15% of your income after the other things that are priorities towards retirement and other things that are important for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd follow up on that. And Darren mentioned both, but there's two types of savings, right? There's short-term savings and there's long-term savings. So for short-term savings, what we recommend is 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, depending on your situation. So some people call that an emergency fund. Growing up, my dad always called that the rat hole. I used to think he really had a hole of money in his closet somewhere that we didn't know about. But it was just like the emergency fund. And that's critical. Like if you're dealing with stress in your life around finances, I would recommend this is probably a great first step, because it's unbelievable just by having a little bit of wiggle room, how that just helps you to breathe and know, like, hey, if something happens, it's not the end of the world. So going back to our story, when my wife and I were first trying to, clean up our mess, and we were saving for our emergency fund, and like when we heard 3 to 6 months savings, we thought there's no way we can do that. Like we don't have the room to stash extra money away. And over the course of several months, we actually did it, and we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I remember shortly after we saved, we had 3 months was our choice, and we didn't have kids at the time, but there was 1 month specifically that we had like 3 major things hit us financially. We had a transmission go out, we had an unexpected medical bill, and we had an AC go out. And it was like our whole savings was depleted in 1 month, and like we were just like, it was sad, right? But at the end of the day, we looked up and we're like, can you imagine what life would look like right now if we didn't have this savings? And so ultimately, for us, what it did is it turned a complete catastrophe into just an inconvenience. And then Darren mentioned the long-term savings. Like, look, if your plan's to work the rest of your life, by all means, don't save anything. But for me, I want to have some options, and so that's the benefit of having long-term savings. It just gives you choices down the road.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about debt. Is it bad? Is debt bad? And whether it's bad or it's not bad, how do I get out of it?
Well, no debt is good, but certain debt is acceptable and considered good. Your mortgage would be considered a good debt. It's an investment into your future. However, we have to be really careful, especially in today's world, that we don't want our mortgage to be ideally more than 25% of our take-home pay. Credit card debt, on the other hand, I can't really say anything good about credit card debt, and it basically takes away your freedom and choices to do other things that are more important to you. And they'll talk a little bit more about that, but the mortgage debt, make sure you're not house poor. You want to be able to live your life and do other things that are fun. And then if you do have debt outside of your mortgage, like credit cards, and a lot of people do. Tyler's got some great numbers on that, but I would list your debts in order, and we call this the debt snowball. and financial peace, and the smallest to the largest, and you focus on the smallest, and you throw everything you can at it, and you get rid of it. Once that's gone, you take the next largest credit card, you throw everything you were throwing at the first one onto the second one, and then some. And eventually, and it's a proven that millions of people have gotten out of debt by using this program. And so I highly encourage getting rid of the bad debt. And but we all have most of us have a mortgage, and we get that.
Yeah.
Let's just be smart about it.
Yeah, I'd follow up with Darren's comments. Like debt is just a burden on you, right? So the way to view debt is, if you weren't making that monthly payment, whether it be a credit card or a car or even your mortgage, what else could you do with that money? I know for us internally as a church, we carry debt on the building, church mortgage. But our vision and our goal is to one day be completely debt free. Not so that we can just sit on more money, but so that we have more money to do ministry with, right? And it's the same thing in your household. Darren mentioned credit card debt. If you pay attention to anything going on in the news financially, credit card debt in our country has just surpassed $1 trillion. Like over the last month, this just happened, which is mind-blowing to think about. 1 trillion, that's 1,000 billion. And what's wild is credit cards are relatively new in our society. Like our grandparents didn't grow up using credit cards. That wasn't a thing. They've only been around like the last 100 years. And if you look at the statistics outside of the amount of credit card debt, we look some of them up. 4 out of 5 Americans have a credit card, and 2 out of 5 Americans carry a balance on their credit card. So, if you're wondering why can't you get ahead, why don't I have room to do things that I say are important, like giving, like saving, this could be a big reason of that. The average interest rate on a credit card is 20.4%. And like some people hear that and it doesn't shock them, and that's almost like more scary than anything else, that what credit cards do has become so normalized in our society that you think it's just something everybody does. And when I say 20.4%, like if I flip that, if I told these guys in their profession, hey, I had a product and you're guaranteed 20.4% return on investment.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Like that's when you start seeing Bentleys in the parking lot in instead of Toyotas. I drive a Toyota, by the way. It's not but the point is, hey, it goes back to being intentional and building a plan.
All right. Let's just dig down a little deeper on that. What do we need to know about credit cards?
The biggest problem with credit cards that I see that hasn't already been mentioned is that they restrict your ability to track your spending. And so when you buy something on a credit card, you don't pay for it until a month or a month and a half or so later. And so by that time, you've already forgotten what you spent, and you've spent more money since then. And so it really hinders your ability to track what you're actually spending, which kills your budget, which kills your monthly priorities.
And I'll throw in some of this. It's a statistical truth about credit cards that when you use a credit card over cash or a debit card where there's a finite amount of money in your account, you're going to spend 20 to 30% more when you go somewhere. And I have a great example of this that hits home personally, and I bet a lot of your hands would raise if you'd agree with me. But if you walk into Costco with $300 in cash and say, this is what I've got, you're not going to spend more than $300. But if you walk into Costco with your credit card, like me, I could walk out of there with a $550 or $600 Costco bill, and because there's a lot of stuff that we really need. And so I think that's something we can all relate to. But as a professional, when I'm working through somebody's financial stuff, if I see that they have credit card debt, I will not let them invest a single dollar with me, because going back to the Bentley, I can't say you're going to make 20+% in an investment. Pay yourself first, stop paying the banks, and get rid of the credit card debt.
Good deal. That last part really spoke to me. I thought I was doing really good because we pay them off at the end of the month, every month, but then I realized, yeah, but we buy more stuff because of that.
It makes it really easy.
Susan, I hope you're taking notes on this. Okay. Uh, and speaking of that, how do finances affect my marriage?
Those who budget together stay together. We've found that to be true in our life. If you've met my wife, Nikki, you know that she's way cooler than me. So I'm the nerd, she's the free spirit. I'm the saver, she's the spender. And we have to figure out a way to balance each other out and to work together. And the way you work together, the way you literally get on the same page when it comes to your finances is by having a monthly budget. It makes you get on the same page. And so since we've been doing a monthly budget and we track our expenses monthly and all that stuff, we don't have money fights anymore. Now we have plenty of money discussions, and we just had lots of money discussions this week with all the expenses that come with homecoming mums and garters and dresses and dances and everything. And so we have plenty of those discussions, but we're not yelling at each other. We're not mad at each other because we're on the same page. We can get mad at math together, but we can't get mad at each other. And so that has really made a great impact in our marriage.
And I want to add that finances, and it's one of the biggest reasons for divorce in America, money problems. And so I was fortunate enough to marry up, and when I asked Trisha 14 plus years ago to marry me, she said, okay, but on one condition, and that's you go through this Financial Peace University class. And I'm like, well, what's that? I'm like, I work in the investment world and don't really need that. And I will tell you it's the best decision that we've ever made. And from day one in our marriage, we have been on the same page, and we've had a budget, we've had a plan, we knew what we wanted to do. And I can tell you that while things can be challenging and things are getting expensive and you have to adapt and update your budget on a constant basis, and going on 14 years of marriage, we've never really had any money fights. Have we ever been stressed out about money? Absolutely. This past month or two has been just these unexpected outflows that have been shocking. And so, fortunately, because we were on the same page from the very beginning, money is just not something that we argue and fight about. And it's been wonderful.
I applaud Darren, you and Tricia for never fighting about money, but for the rest of us, right? I'm pretty passionate about this.
Didn't say it was easy.
So Darren mentioned this statistic, money fights and money problems is one of the leading causes of divorce in our country. And if that's true, then what it also means is the topic of money and finances have the opportunity to be one of the greatest things that help you to work together. And I can say, that's true for my marriage. Early on, for Jody and I, when we first got married, we were fighting all the time about money. And, we're not, or at least I'm not the smartest. It took me a while to figure out why we were fighting, but it was because we had conflicting goals, right? What I wanted to do with our money and my plan was different from her plan. And we never took the time to get aligned. And it wasn't until we started talking about having kids, and Jody said, once we start having kids, I want to have the ability to stay home. And all of a sudden, we had a common goal. And it was, financially based. And, hey, I'd love for you to stay home too. But if we're going to do that, then we need to clean some things up so that we can afford it. And so we aligned, we worked through the plan, we were able to do it. And what we found is, when we do things together, it really strengthens our marriage. And since then, we've never looked back.
Good. Excellent. What role, if any, does the Bible play in your financial planning?
Well, Jesus actually mentions budgeting in the Bible, which is important. In Luke chapter 14, when he says, "But don't begin to follow me. Don't begin to follow me until you count the cost. For who would begin the construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you." These days, we'd say, oh, nobody would laugh at us. We just go get another loan. But I think that's where the credit card companies are laughing at us behind our back. But that's another point. As an advisor in my practice, the Bible was my guide for moral and absolute truth. And so it It instructs me in what integrity is all about. It teaches me to be a good steward and what that looks like.
And for me and for us personally, when I think about financial planning, initially it's for our household. And it lets us really create our family values and what's important and where do we want to allocate our resources. And we really, as a family, have a top three, and that's God, family, and for us, we really want to travel as a family and see the world and do things. So we allocate our resources accordingly to make sure that that's what we're able to spend most of our money on instead of eating out. Yeah, it's great, but that's just not really that important to us. So we try to not eat out. We don't buy expensive cars. We try to look at our discretionary spending and all these things and designer clothes, and it's just those aren't the things that are important to us. And so we really try to hold back on those things and choose not to do them so that we can allocate them to our top three family values.
Yeah, I would say if you call yourself a Jesus follower, then this question should be critical. Like the Bible should play a huge role in your finances. Andrew mentioned the word steward, which is kind of a fancy word, and Tom, you've talked about this up here before, but that word stewardship, it means manager. And so, like, if I was a guy who had like a big ranch or something and I wanted to hire somebody to help me run my ranch, I hire a steward to manage it on my behalf. He's not an owner. It's my stuff. I just pay him to help run it. And the Bible tells us that, everything belongs to God anyway, so we're to be stewards of that. So, I try to flip that question for me internally. Like if I was going to hire somebody to manage my money, what kind of person would I hire? And what kind of decisions would I want them to make? And then I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, am I making choices that are honoring to God? Like, should God hire me to be a steward? And if I'm not, then it's time to make some changes.
Okay, good deal. All right. I've mentioned tithing over the last few weeks. What about tithing? From your perspective as financial advisors, people who deal with people's money, and your own money, is tithing really financially sound?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I would say it depends on who you ask. Is tithing financially sound? So, if your goal is to retain everything that you earn and that you accrue and hold on to it, then no, it probably doesn't make sense to tithe. But if your goal is to be generous, then absolutely. So for us, tithing's become way more than just a financial decision. So, what I believe the purpose of tithing is and why God commands us to do it is because it's the first step on teaching you to be generous and to teach you to put others first and to teach you to live with an open hand. So what I've seen in my life is because I've learned to tithe and I do that willingly with an open heart and I use that as an act of worship, it's changed so many other aspects of my life. When I go to work, I'm in sales. So like everybody has an experience of, working with a salesman who's clearly just out for their own interest, right? But because, God's taught me to live with an open hand and to put others first, it's changed the way that I approach my career. And in turn, I've grown in my career and been pretty successful in that. And, similar with our marriage, hey, I can be selfish and worry about my needs, but what does a marriage look like whenever I'm putting my wife before myself? And, what we say is it's like a race to the back of the line. And I would say the biggest example is in my relationships and in my friendships. And, we feel incredibly blessed to have some really quality relationships with many people who are sitting in this room. And, think about who your best friends are and who you would say your closest friends are. And are they people who are stingy and greedy, or are they people who live with an open hand and who put others first? And for me, I'd rather live on a little bit less and live with that lifestyle of being selfless.
Yeah, tithing is, for me, I agree with Tyler, that it's the beginning of generosity. For us, it's a monthly reminder that everything we have is a gift from God, and we can trust Him with our lives. He's always provided more than enough, and he always will.
And, I almost can't sum it up any better, but there's a couple of things, and that's we are all at different points in our life, and we grow spiritually. And there's been a couple passages over the years that really helped me when I think about this, and that's the earth is the Lord's and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. Psalm 24:1. And honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Proverbs 3:9 and 10. And I highly suggest Proverbs. There's a lot of great stuff in there about your finances. But these scriptures have really helped me over the many years reprioritize my thought process and the values, and that I need to honor God with all that I do. And I kind of mentioned earlier, at the beginning of our marriage with FPU, and being on the same page from the very beginning was helpful. But she even went into my books from that year before we were actually married and said, I see you're giving, but we didn't give enough. We need to catch that up. And so from day one, we have made it as a family a priority to do that. And then a real short story about that is going through financial peace, being on the same page, having a budget, knowing where our resources are going. We had $36,000 in student loans when we got married. No credit card debt, no other debt. And we didn't have kids, which is a big deal. So, but the $36,000 was a little over half our total salary back then. And for the 18 months, we crimped, we saved, we prioritized giving, we did this, we ate in, we didn't travel. We wanted that paid off before we had kids. And God, over that next year or so, really blessed us in ways we couldn't have possibly knew were going to happen. And all of a sudden, I was getting these bonus checks from my company and unexpected money coming in that just never came in. And in 18 months' time, with the salaries that we had, all $36,000 of student loans was paid off, and we were able to start off our family with a clean slate. It was huge.
Cool. I know when I talk to people about tithing, I hear a lot of, I know that's good, I know that's God's will, but I just can't. What would you say to that person that says, but I just can't?
I'd say pick a percentage, any percentage. I'd prefer it be 10%, but just if you feel like that's impossible and you're never going to do it, start with any other percentage and just get in the game. Start giving. You have to get out off the sidelines, because if you wait until you feel like you can afford to give, you're never going to feel that way. And so you're never going to begin giving, and which means you're never going to become a generous person. So I think of it like giving being financial exercise for generosity. Okay, so you can't put off lifting weights until you have more muscle to lift the weights, right? Nobody looks around and says, "Gosh, I've got all these giant muscles. What am I going to do with it? I got to go find some weight to lift." No, you get the muscle from lifting the weights, right? And so giving is like that. It teaches you, and it's the exercise to become generous in everything, as Tyler mentioned, in life. So I'm a financial advisor, but I'm also a CrossFit coach. And so I'm the CrossFit coach that always believes that you can lift more than you think you can lift. And so I'm constantly telling folks in our gym, I think you can put more weight on that bar. I think you can lift heavier. And people tell me, no, I can't do that. This excuse, that excuse. And so what I'll do is I'll wait until they're not looking, and then I'll put more weight on the bar for them. And then I'll watch them lift successfully the weight that they just told me that it was impossible for them to lift. And so I would encourage you in that way in giving. If you think you can't, you might just try and surprise yourself.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Also, just try it, right? I've talked to a lot of folks about tithing, and I've never met a single person who regrets what they've tithed, right? For me personally, there's a lot of things I've regretted that I've purchased, but I've also never regretted what I've given. So, you've mentioned the 90-day tithe challenge through this series, which I think is an incredible tool just to put that to the test. But something else, and we didn't mention this in run through, so forgive me, but I was talking to my mom a couple weeks ago about tithing, and she mentioned this, and she said, tithing's never really been a problem for me because my parents taught me to do it, and it's something I've always done. And for me, like, that was the same. Like, it's just never been a thing because I've always done it. So I've always been used to living on 90%. And so if you're a parent, and this is the season of life I am, what an incredible opportunity to teach your kids, to get them in the habit early of, hey, when you make $1, 10 cents of that needs to go back to God, and that's what God's commanded us to do.
I like what you said, because I think if you wait till you can afford it, it's kind of like if you wait till you can afford having kids, we would have no children's ministry because there wouldn't be any kids, because you can never afford them, but you have them and you feed them. You figure out a way. Absolutely. I hope you feed them. If you could give people just one piece of advice regarding their finances, what would you say is the most important thing that you could tell them?
Well, there's so many different variables to your daily finances. There's debt, there's savings, there's retirement, there's insurance, there's taxes, there's all these different things going on, so many different moving parts. And I think it's really important to educate yourself as much as possible about each one of those things because they all work together for the end result. So the one thing I would say would be Financial Peace University helps to give you the basics around all of the things with your money on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis. And if I could have taken that in my teens or 20s, the things that I could be doing for my family and kids and future generations and God's kingdom now would be even greater. So the sooner I would even put your kids, into that program. And the other thing I would add to that is there is so much scripture around finances and money in the Bible that I would encourage everyone to seek it and read it because it will help you, I think, with contentment and your budget and your priorities.
Yeah, I would just say, like, if we've made money sound easy, then we've failed. And it's hard, right? So my biggest point of advice would be to give yourself a break. It's not going to be perfect. My wife and I have been doing budgets for years, and sometimes they're wrong, and so we have to learn from that. I'll be transparent that we're coming out of a season of just constant chaos that we got in a habit of not keeping up to date with our budget, and what we realize is we're overspending. So we don't stop doing budgets altogether. We don't stop worrying about our finances altogether. We just say, okay, it's time for us to pause, reset, right? It's like if you forget to brush your teeth tonight, it's not like, oh man, my teeth are ruined, I give up, I'm never gonna brush them again. So just give yourself some grace. I think it's interesting how taboo the subject of money has become. So one thing that I found in my life that's beneficial is I have a couple close friends that we talk about money, and look, we're honest with each other, and hey, I'm not here to try to impress you, or it's not like I'm trying to hide all my dirty secrets of how terrible we are with our money, but it's, hey, let's talk about that and challenge each other in that and become better in that. And then the last piece, which I know we're going to talk about, is there's some incredible tools, and we publish these tools, and the church doesn't benefit from that. In fact, it's a pretty big expense for us to provide things like Ramsey Plus that gets you access to FPU for free. We used to charge for that, and now it's available to you. And the Every Dollar app, that's a subscription app that if you wanted to do it on your own, you have to pay for it. And the church has partnered with that organization because we see so much value in that we cover the cost for you. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to go off what Tyler said, I'm all for the 90-day tithe challenge, but what I have to tell people again in the CrossFit gym is, you sometimes overestimate what you can do in 90 days, but you're underestimating what can happen in 5 years and 10 years if you keep at this. And but the biggest piece of advice, I would just keep beating that dead horse of track your spending. Track your spending, because that is a hard look in the mirror, and it's often a rude awakening in what you actually see. If you start to track your spending, you'll see what you're really giving your money away to every single month. And that should motivate you to budget so that you're prioritizing your spending appropriately. It'll motivate you to simplify. It will empower you to give. And so I would say track your spending.
That's good. I Every week that we've done this, I've given you some next steps, which are basically some challenges. And I'm just going to give you some this week as well. And the first one is, if you have not taken the 90-day tithe challenge, I want to challenge you to take the 90-day tithe challenge today. And it's real simple. You just get your phone and you text 90 days to 97000. And no one's going to bother you. No one's going to call you. We'll send you out some encouragement text. That's it. Give that a try. And because I believe it will bless you and bless your family and bless your children and generations to come. I know you've been hearing that from me a lot, and you're probably going, yeah, but you're a pastor and you're supposed to say that. But I want you to hear that from someone else. So I want you to watch a short video of one of you challenging you to take this, all right?
One Sunday, a single 40-minute message changed the course of my life forever. Pastor Tom asking members of Crosspoint Church to be obedient for 90 days in tithing to test our faith by trusting God. Pastor Tom's 100% money back guarantee with no questions asked policy, I thought, this is like playing blackjack. If I bust, I still win. That Sunday, there was 10% left in my checking account from the Thursday's paycheck before. Tempted by 2 outstanding checks that would overdraft my account, I chose to give to Crosspoint Church. Doubtful, I thought, what better way to bust than right out the gate, right? With a preacher's promise and the remaining 10%, I chose to obey. Over the next few days, I logged into online banking expecting a financial nightmare. However, on the third day, God moved at the roundabout on Pearland Parkway. I logged in to discover 3 cleared checks and a positive remaining balance. Understanding not only had the 2 previous checks cleared, but the 10% offering check had cleared as well. Thinking there was a clerical error or Pastor Tom secretly worked at the bank, I dug deeper. Only to discover that 364 days prior, I unknowingly enrolled in their Keep the Change program. This meant that all previous purchases were rounded up to the next dollar and annually matched by the bank. In that moment, I accepted that my identity was just faith in God with the belief of Jesus. I thought, if I believe in Jesus, what should I do? I thought, well, I should trust in Jesus and do what Jesus says. Then God asked, Eric, what does Jesus say to do? My reaction was to take a deep breath. I pointed my finger and I said, I don't know. Let me get back to you. In our journey, it's important to continuously realign ourselves with what actively pursuing Christ looks like. The lesson I learned was I was teetering on a thin line between faith and trust, completely unaware that the enemy was conditioning me to think I knew what was best for myself. I finally understood that following Christ without praying, tithing, serving, or devoting time in His Word was impossible. I thought of how I used to assemble a new piece of furniture from IKEA. It was always a catastrophe. Looking at the picture on the front of the box, never thinking I needed the instruction manual that was inside. Once I thought it was complete, my family didn't look as happy as the one in the picture. So for those of y'all that are nervous on being obedient to tithing and probably just sitting there in the back row checking your Dogecoin or your Amazon cart, I would encourage you to make a life-changing step. That even though your bank account might not look like you want it to, and that giving a tenth sounds like too much, I can assure you the church does not need your money. What it really is it's God asking you to trust Him and to trust Jesus Christ, not on your own understanding. I know that may look difficult and it may look scary, but we're conditioned to think that we are in control of ourselves and we know what's best for ourselves. And really trusting in the Lord can change your life.
All right, good job, Eric. And I don't work at a bank. But the other thing I want to say to you is this. I want to really challenge you and encourage you to take Financial Peace University. It's going on this afternoon. At what time? 4 o'clock. It's not too late to jump in. They'll catch you up. We have online version. We have Ramsey Plus. You all have a free subscription. You can use that. There is so many resources that your church has invested in you because they want you to have a good life. And then I want to encourage you to become a hilarious giver, because people who are generous are the happiest people on the planet. And it's not a matter of how much you have. Sometimes it's more a matter, in fact, Jesus even said it. There is more blessing, more joy, more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. And I think you should take him at his word, because I found it to be the truth. And I found that very late in life, and I don't want you to find that late in life. But I'd rather you find it late in life than never find it at all. I would like for you to do one favor for me, and I would like for you to thank these three guys who did an outstanding job. And thank you for going through this series with us. And it has been a joy for me, and I hope it has been practical and helpful for you. And I want to pray for all of you. So if we could just bow our heads, I want to lift you up to God. Father, thank you for what you have done. You have provided so graciously for us in so many ways, more ways than we are aware of, in more ways than we will ever know. And Father, I pray that we would take you at your word, that we would trust you, that we would believe you, that we would give not just with the desire of getting back, but for the total and complete enjoyment of giving, and the total and absolute complete enjoyment of being faithful to you and obedient. Lord God, I pray that you'd bless these, your people, and I thank you for their faith in you. May it ever grow. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay.